Throughout my entire life, I've never touched one drug, barely touched any alcohol, and yet I've still let feelings of anger and fear get to me. This video is showing you all about how I overcame these feelings. By the end of this video, you're going to know 3 real ways to handle your anger in a healthy, biblical way. I've been a Christian pretty much all my life, but never really understood what it meant to be a Christian until I've actually practiced and lived it. And that's truly what this video is really about. If you don't learn to control your anger, it's going to control you and everyone around you. So I believe that you're not here on accident, you're here for a reason. And whether you're just discovering who you are with your anger issues, or you're trying to figure out who you are as a Christian with your faith, maybe you don't believe in anything, this video is going to help you with clarity with that. Now, I've always been a strong believer in not only Christianity, but in therapy as well. And I'm no stranger to being in the therapist chair, but here's the truth. Every single person needs therapy. That's truly what I believe, because we all have stuff we could sort out. Basically, what I think therapy is just flipping the mirror around and just looking at yourself from another lens. And I bring up therapy because I have never been officially diagnosed with anger problems or anything like that. I've encountered things in my life that have made me short and have made me frustrated inside, to a point where more than once in my life I feel like I've had anger issues. And while I don't think they've ever fully come out like externally, I think I've been holding enough of it in over the years to really have it become a problem. So I'll just hop right into the first point here. Ever since a very young age, I never felt like I had any control over my life. I was an only child. My parents divorced when I was 7 years old. I moved 3 to 4 times between the ages of 7 and 9, and then they got remarried. And then they stayed together throughout the years and got divorced again when I was 25, when my daughter was born. If you ask me, I think I was the reason they got remarried in the first place. But that's another topic. My point is, besides watching people I looked up to growing up display bouts of anger, I never really truly understood what it meant to have a voice of my own. That, combined with the trust issues I've had growing up with certain people, peers. I had people steal from me before. I had people I thought I could trust end up stealing from me in middle school. This led to distrust, which led to anger. And not anger that I would display outward either. It would be anger that I held inside, and it would fester over years and years of time. And I wouldn't tell anybody besides the therapist I wouldn't see until I was much older. I was in therapy as a kid, but that was mostly just for the divorce stuff going on. Proverbs 29:11 says, "A fool gives full vent to his anger, but a wise man quietly holds it back." Now, I know what you're thinking. Just stay with me, because this whole video is not just talking about holding up back your anger. There's a healthy way to cope with it, and that's isolating. This isn't suppression, it's self-control. It's choosing to pause before you react. And self-control is not weakness. So this is something that I've noticed in myself, is when I find myself getting really angry, I take a step away. I go for a walk. I separate myself physically and emotionally, typically outside if possible. There's numerous moments throughout Scripture where Jesus separated himself and took a step back and needed to time to pray. I'll make this simple and break it into 4 steps. Retreat before you react, reveal your heart to God and yourself, release what you can't control, and re-engage with God's purposes. Even if you're still building your relationship with God, just being alone in solitude is enough. It's a form of meditation. It's a form of separation and internal healing. This is why the gurus online tell you why meditation is so important. You need that time to come down. I actually use a system now through therapy, oddly enough, with my wife, and it saved us, one among many things that is. And it's a color system. It's very simple. If you're slightly annoyed, if we're slightly annoyed with each other, we tell each other that we're yellow. If it builds, if we're a little bit more aggravated, it doesn't have to be at each other, at something else. It could be orange. And then that signifies that, okay, like maybe we should keep our distance. And then when we really know we can't be in the same room or space as each other, it's red. So for example, if something happened and one of us says to each other, "I'm red," then we know that we can't even be around each other, because what we say in that moment isn't exactly what we mean. What you say in anger doesn't reflect the truth. Nothing good could happen in the red zone. This is why isolating myself is my go-to, especially when I'm red. 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 6 through 7. "Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time, casting all your care upon him, for he careth for you." In other words, isolation is just a form of healing. God doesn't want you to be angry. Anger is not from God. Anger is from the enemy. Isolating doesn't mean you run away. It means you just give it to God. You give God what you can't carry so you could come back with a level head. Stepping away is only step one. It's really what you do when you step away that matters the most. Which brings me to the next thing I practice. And it's something I practiced long before I started isolating, because I probably stuck around longer than I should have at a young age. Now, if you've watched any of my content before, this might not come as a surprise. The second coping method I use to handle my anger, instead of something like drugs or alcohol, is exercise. Of course it is. I'm a fitness trainer. I'm a fitness coach. But I wasn't always a fitness coach from a young age. I didn't always know I was supposed to be a fitness coach. Well, maybe not until at least of age, let's say 22. Something my parents also struggled with was their weight and their health and their eating habits. And I couldn't help but notice over the years from a young age, their relationship was rocky with each other, of course, but could that be the reason why they were so unhappy with themselves? Now that I'm recording this, it kind of feels like it's all connected in a way. But basically, I've watched them struggle at things like weight loss surgeries and take extreme routes like that, all to just gain the weight back and just be in bad health, still in effect to this day. And I'm not saying that to single them out. I'm not saying that to put them on the spot. I'm saying that because it genuinely shaped the person I am. And it's because that's how it started for me that I became interested in helping people become in tune with their health and feel the way they're meant to feel. I don't believe that anybody should feel like they're trapped in their own bodies. I don't feel like anybody should struggle doing basic human functional movements, like going up the stairs, getting out of recliners. And I hear this all the time. I see it all the time on places at social media, like, well, real trainers know what it's like being heavy and then they lose all the weight, and stuff like, well, I'd rather get trained by somebody who's been there themselves and knows the mental battles and knows the struggles. And I'm going to push back on that and say, I don't have to have experienced what they go through to have seen it. I made a decision based on what I saw to live a different way. And I don't think that makes me any less qualified by any stretch. I don't think that makes me less aware. Sure, do I not know the exact struggle somebody who's heavy or overweight goes through, mentally, physically, and otherwise? Maybe not the exact same, no. But what I can do is empathize, because I've had people growing up make fun of them, make fun of people who are heavier, and I see it. People forget that they're human beings. They don't deserve to be treated that way no more than anyone else. They're human. It's someone's son, it's someone's daughter. And that's something I've always seen. So instead of fat shaming, why don't you try and lend a helping hand? Educate them. Encourage them for trying to make positive changes to their lives. If you see somebody at the gym, if you see somebody on a walk that's heavier, let's change the stigma. So in a way, you can say that fear motivated me growing up to become who I am, to start working out, to start running. But my response to that is fear can be a good motivator, but don't let it hang around forever. Because now I say that I work out and I choose to run because I genuinely enjoy it, and I enjoy how it makes my body feel. I enjoy the feeling of it. I enjoy everything in my life, being a positive example for my family, being able to help people who need it, be a positive influence. But even if I wasn't a trainer, I would do it for that reason and not fear. Negative reinforcement only works so much. And that's my whole point here, is I use running and working out as my anti-drug. I use it to cope because it does bring out those feel-good endorphins. It does make me more confident. It does make me feel better about myself. Not just because I'm a fitness coach, not just because it's what I do, but because of the person it helps me become. Of course, I got to reference 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 19. Do you not know that your bodies are temples of the Holy Spirit, who is in you, whom you have received from God? You are not your own. In other words, taking care of your body is an act of worship, not vanity, and it gives your anger somewhere productive and healthy to go. Now, your movements and your workouts, they clear your body. They cleanse it. They cleanse it physically, but it doesn't cleanse your heart, and that takes something deeper. Which brings me to the third and most effective method, which is prayer. And I want to start off by saying that prayer is something that God always listens to, and he'll always answer you. I had my pastor, Tom, from my church, tell me this, and it stood out to me. Prayers are always answered in one of three ways: yes, not yet, and hold on, I've got something even better. Now, unlike isolation that I didn't truly start until I was older because I couldn't really isolate that much as I wanted to as a kid, and unlike working out that I didn't really engage in until age 14 and up, prayer is something I've done since as long as I could remember, age 4, 5. And while I didn't really know what I was doing per se until honestly 2 to 3 years ago, my faith has always been so strong because my prayers have always been answered. Going over what I just said, they may not have always been yeses, but God always had something better for me. And yes, I've had challenges just like any of you or anybody else in this world, but I wouldn't change anything. Everything is on time. God's timing is perfect. I remember praying for everything I have now and then some. I have things now that I never could have dreamed of having, and it's all thanks to the glory of God. If you are watching this and you've ever felt alone, you're never ever meant to carry something like this by yourself. Anger is debilitating, it's crippling. Fear is something that kills people. But once you truly have a relationship with God, everything just gets better. Always knowing that your Father's got your back. Somebody recently asked me, like, how do I know my Father's got me? How do you know God is on your side? 3 things. Let's get the logical one out of the way. Historical evidence. I look at the Bible just as somebody would look at a historical textbook or any historical document. These are actual historical events. There were over 500 people who've testified to seeing Jesus. He was most certainly a real person. That's a fact. And I'll go on to say that if you don't know anything about the Bible, if you're a new Christian, just read the Gospel, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and then read Acts. These were real people who knew Jesus in the flesh, and they died for him. And nobody dies for what they know to be a lie. And shout out to Pastor Carey and Pastor Lance from my church to really helping me understand that. So that's number 1. Number 2 may sound obvious, but it's faith. Faith and fear both require seeing something that may or may not be there. And number 3 is personal testimony. Throughout my young age, God has always answered. Back to what I went over earlier. A letter from Paul to the Philippians, chapter 4, verses 6 through 7. Do not be anxious about anything, but in every situation, by prayer and petition with thanksgiving, present your requests to God, and the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. In other words, ask him and he'll answer. Write this down. Prayer should not be your last resort. It's your first move. Isn't there a song by Jelly Roll that says, like, whenever I talk to God, I need a favor? Let's change that. Just talk to God. Just practice talking to him, even when things are going your way. It doesn't always have to be when things are going wrong. And this is something I'm still practicing today. I still get lost in that sometimes when I don't pray for an extended period of time and I realize, wow, I'm only praying when I want something. That's not how it should be. Get in the habit of praying when things go right and praising God and practicing gratitude, which is a whole nother layer to this. Without my gratitude, I would be so much angrier, because if you ask me what happiness means to me, happiness is gratitude. Happiness is gratitude and love. It's appreciation for what you have. So from the initial divorce at 7 years old, all the moving around until I was age 9 when they got back together, then when they got divorced again at age 25 when my daughter was born, getting caught in the middle of that and just giving me all the wrong ideas about my relationship with money and my relationship with my wife, and it's crippled me. It almost ended my marriage. It almost ended myself. It gave me such bad depression and anxiety, and I'm on antidepressant meds now because of it. And it's still something I'm actively working on every single day. And if you made it this far in this video, I'm assuming you are still working on it as well. Once I immersed myself fully in trusting God, everything else in my life got better, especially my marriage and relationships as a whole, because I don't have to be scared anymore. That trust is what broke the cycle. Now I feel super safe and secure in my marriage and anywhere else I go in life, to be honest. All because I let go of that anger and distrust I grew up with and what I held with me for so long. Holding on to trauma that you don't address is never a good thing. With that said, therapy should never be a replacement for prayer. They go hand in hand. They should be companions. And prayer should always come first. So to recap, the 3 things that I've done over the years throughout my life to help me cope with my anger, with my distrust, with my fear are isolating, taking myself away in a healthy manner without hurting others, without saying anything in that red zone I talked about earlier. Number 2 is using exercise as my anti-drug. It's really helped me let go of negativity. It's a natural way to get positive endorphins running throughout your body. It just makes everything better. And of course, the third one, and most important, that I've practiced the longest in my life, and that is praying and fully immersing myself in God. Now, of course, I didn't fully immerse myself in God, in Christianity, in my relationship in Him up until maybe 2 years ago when I got baptized as an adult. But the idea is trusting God should be a first response, not a last resort. Here's 4 action steps you could take today or this week to get you closer to defeating your anger and distrust. First step is to own it. Take fully responsibility for your faults. Even if it's something that you say you argue with your wife or something, even if it's not fully your fault, take responsibility for the things that you are at fault for, which means that you don't let your emotions get the best of you. You don't constantly have your fists up trying to battle everybody. Overall, you just need to let go of the blaming. It costs way too much energy anyway, trust me. It's not worth it. Next thing is pick one form of movement this week, no matter what it is, even if it's something like air squats. Of course, if you don't want to go to that length, you could just start by going for a walk. It's something that it's easy to do. You're a grown adult. You're able to isolate, remove yourself from a situation that you don't like if you're feeling that anger, and just practice it. And if you take it to the level of bringing it to the gym, it becomes that much better, because there's something about lifting weights. There's something about high intensity cardio, getting your heart rate up and breaking a sweat that just makes you feel better. If you don't believe me, go try it for yourself. Third thing is writing down something that you've been carrying alone. Bring it to somebody you trust, or better yet, bring it to God. Something that needs to be resolved, something that maybe there's an apology that needs to happen. Maybe there's some forgiveness that needs to happen with you or somebody you know. Maybe something needs to be said or something needs to be done. Whatever it may be, just let it go. Let it happen. It's like Mel Robbins says, let them. Let it just happen. And this is not an exaggeration, my life got better the less I started to care. I don't say that in a malicious way. Of course I care, but if I just spend that much time worrying about stuff that may or may not happen, it's just going to make me that much more depressed. It's going to put me in that much more of a negative spot. The fourth thing you could do this week is remember that it's not about getting it perfect. It's about learning the lesson, making the adjustment, and trusting God to handle the rest. This is the key. If you trust God, we only have so much control in our lives as individual human beings. And I always tell this to my daughter, like, you cannot control other people. You can't control other people's actions. You can't control 99% of the things in your life, if you think about it. You know how little of an impact we have around the world around us? Of course, selfishly, like, we're programmed to think that way, right? Like, we have control over what we have control over, but there's really a lot in our lives where we don't have control over. And this is what I have a problem with, like, with atheists and non-believers. First of all, like, if there is no God, your life is meaningless. And second of all, if you don't believe in a God, you believe in yourself. You're your own savior. We cannot save ourselves. We're all going to die one day. And until that day comes, we only have so much control over what happens. Sure, we could make decisions that will alter certain things, but you're never going to know true peace unless you give it all to Him. If anything at all in this video resonated with you, make sure you hit that like button, because it's going to show it to more like-minded Christian men like yourself, or women. And of course, I went over my 3 techniques. Make a comment down below writing 1, 2, or 3 based on the isolation, working out, and praying. Which one is going to resonate and help you the most, you think? And of course, any ideas you have that you want to discuss, I could always talk about in a future video. I talked a lot about anger and distrust and fear in this video. I was truly stuck my entire life until I learned proper boundaries. And if you want to learn more about how I handled my boundaries, click the video right here. Subscribe for more faith and fitness content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.